how do you get your first client?
Oh, my first client. This is a good question.
Maybe not
People
you,
wonder
but
that.
like how does
How
somebody
does
get their
somebody?
first client?
I
Yeah.
think it's the same way that I did. My first client came just from a close friend of mine that I used to work with, who went to another company and started sending me work. And it was actually she was the marketing director while I was the creative director at Fox in our department, and she started working at Sony. And she reached out to me and said, "Hey, I have a project, I have a website, and I need a little brochure thing for this Sony property." And so she reached out to me, and it was so easy because I was close friends with her, and she was like, I said, "What should I charge?" And she was like, she told me the budget. She said, "How about 20 grand?" And I was like, "Okay." I probably would have bid it for like 6, but she was like, "No, how about 20 grand?" Because that's what she had in the budget. So I had the luxury of that close relationship kind of forcing me into higher ticket freelance projects before I was even mentally prepared to know what to charge and to do that. And my first few clients came that same way. They were friends of mine from past work places.
So you had like an insider almost.
Yeah, an insider. And a lot of people do. Like, I think a lot of people have somebody who they worked with somewhere before. They built trust over time, and then that person becomes a client. Now, it may not always be a coworker. It could be like somebody you went to design school with, and now they're a creative director somewhere, and they were your friend, and you hung out and did projects together, and now they're giving you work or you're giving them work. I think it's relationship based. I mean, I built my whole agency on relationship marketing. Well, what about you? How do you, I like these to be conversational, and I know you're so smart and you have so much to share. Where'd your first client come from, and what do you recommend to people?
So I think my path was so different from yours. So maybe we can kind of compare and see.
Yeah.
Because like I think there's maybe different ways. Like I didn't work in an agency. I didn't work in like a design company or even in a design department. My job was completely different. I had an IT job. But what happened was I just love making websites. So I made websites for friends for free. And I just made website for like my department just for fun. But that became a portfolio for me to get my first design job. And while I was there, one of my coworker was starting a company where she sells like baby clothes. And I made a website for her for $1,700.
Yeah.
And it took me 9 months to build. And I was kind of
Whoa.
learning e-commerce while I was doing it.
Yeah.
So I actually started like very low.
Yeah.
And I kind of grinded. And what happened was 3 or 4 projects into it. And like this whole time I was losing money, obviously. Like,
Yeah.
I feel like those 3, 4 projects have gotten me like started getting me my next referral projects and my new inbound projects. And
Yeah.
that's kind of how I grew it. Yeah.
Yes. So it was a coworker that you had that gave you that first project.
Yeah,
I would
that's
say,
true.
I mean, my very, very first project was a $300 website and logo that I did for this nonprofit company. But that was like 6 years before I actually consider my agency first project being that Sony project.
Got it. Like when
I mean, I had a $300 site. I had like $150 logo somewhere in there that I did for someone during my early kind of dead end design jobs that I had. Get somebody who's like, "Hey, can you design a logo for my brother who's starting this business?" I'd be like, "Yeah." And then
So you were always already years into design before you kind of went on your own.
Yeah.
Is that what you would recommend? Like, because I see a lot of young people kind of jump right in from like without like a lot of experience.
Do, right? I think it's different now because you can get the education to be able to do it on your own if you choose early on. You go back to 1996 is when I graduated from university. And how do you freaking learn how to find a client or price a project or anything? There was nothing. There were a couple books and they were mediocre at best. And some magazines, you could get How magazine or something. They'd have a 2-page spread about pricing and it would be like, just the high level summary. Nobody got into the weeds. And now you have people like you or me or Chris Doe or all these other thought leaders that are out sharing real world actionable content. So I think it's feasible for people now to jump right in. If you get skilled at the service, whether it's dev or marketing or design or UX or whatever you're choosing, you can just jump right in. There'll be a learning curve, but you can just jump right in. Back in my day.
So for people like that who want to jump right in, like let's say not really have experience working in a corporate environment.
Yeah.
How would you recommend them to get their first client?
Okay, so I'll get super tactile on this. This is, I think, create a piece of messaging that basically says, here's who I am, here's who I work for, here's the problem that I solve for them, and here are the services that I use to solve it. So you can take this and you can say, hey, my name's Mike. I'm a web designer. I create restaurant websites with online ordering so that people can order and then you can go and drop it off in the parking lot to them, just like all of your competitors. That's what I build. And so I work primarily with restaurant owners and I build their website and make that turnkey process for them. And then it comes with the hook or the CTA at the end. Do you know any restaurant owners? Do you know somebody who's owning restaurant? Now you craft that little message and then you share that with everybody you've ever met ever in your whole entire freaking life. Share it on your social media, share it with your friends, call your friends, take your friends to lunch, take the people you know and start creating this army of people listening for opportunities for you because you've dialed it into a specific problem and a specific solution that you solve. And that's the best way, I think, to find a client early on before you have a network of other clients to start nurturing and marketing and getting referrals and all that stuff. You got to get the message out there and get it to people who trust you already, who will transfer that trust to someone that they know. And I think it can be super effective.
Yeah, as you were saying that, like I haven't thought about this before, but I think the one piece that a lot of people miss is what you said about I work with restaurants and I solve this problem for you and blah, 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 like that specific solution. Because I think, people do go and like say, hey, do you know anyone? Can you introduce me to a client? Blah, blah, blah. But they don't do that specific. They're like I can do brand strategy. I can do UI design. And they make it so hard. Like,
well, they go in and they say like, hey, I'm a designer. You know anybody who needs something to be designed? Like that's the pitch. And then it's so generic that the person can't really identify a target client inside of their network. So it's a tough pitch. The tighter you get on that, the easier it is for opportunities to come. Go ahead.
What would you say to people that are like, but I don't want to box myself in, or I don't want to like limit myself to just that, like just doing restaurant websites?
So I believe in niche experiments. You should be experimenting with niches, and you should pick multiple niches at the start of things you're interested in trying to do. And one might be restaurant websites. Another one might be, let's just say, tech startup branding. Okay, so you have these two things you're interested in. On the homepage of your website and in the homepage of your mind, you create a generalist portfolio. You say, hey, my name is Sun. I'm a designer. Here's some of the work I've done. And then you create a couple modules. One says, if you're a restaurant, I love doing restaurant websites. Another module says, if you're a tech startup, I love branding tech startups. And those little modules link to a landing page that is hyper dedicated to the niche you're trying to experiment with. So when you're talking to someone who is a tech startup, you're only showing them the tech startup landing page. You're not showing them your homepage where it says, I'm just a designer. You're showing them the tech startup landing page that says, here's your problem. Here's how I solve it for you. Here's some testimonials. here's some portfolio of other tech startups I've done branding for. It's that kind of approach. So experiment with niches. You don't even have to put them on your homepage. Just make them landing pages that are hidden. So make your homepage a generalist homepage so you're not alienating opportunities, but then go and do targeted marketing, like reach out to tech startup people on LinkedIn and send them the link of your landing page for tech startups, not to your homepage. You got to try and reduce the amount of dots that the person has to connect before they can realize what you can do or what problem you can solve for them.
Oh, that's so smart. Like niching down doesn't mean you can only have one niche. You can actually have multiple
you can
niches.
have multiple. And at some point in your business, you may find that one of the niches is the one you love the most. It's generating the most amount of money. You don't like the other ones anymore, so you drop those niches. And at some point, because you've become so known for this one type of thing, you change your homepage.
That's true.
And say, that's what I do. That's what I do. But I think it's risky for some of these designers that are young that feel this pressure. I got a niche. It's risky to change your freaking homepage when I ask them, okay, if you're targeting restaurants, but if Google called you and said that they wanted some illustration work and primarily you're marketing to restaurants, you want Google to go away because your homepage says you're a restaurant thing? No, they don't want that. That's too much of a risk until you know what the niche is for your business and you have it generating enough revenue to give you the freedom to say no to whatever before you even get the choice.
It's so funny because everything that you're saying is like, I wish I had learned this before I started, because it's all things that I intuitively, it took me years to realize.
Yeah. You figured
and I didn't.
I did too. I didn't know either, man. I was the same. I was like, what do I do? And you hear people talking about niching and stuff. I didn't know. So it's scary. But yeah, you did it.
Yeah.
So I know you have some niches. What are the niches that you have served in your agency?
So in the beginning, I just, just like everyone else, like we say, oh, we're a full service agent. We do everything. And like that didn't really work out because it's like one of the things I learned early on is that full service agencies, unless you're like Ogilvy, actually gets the worst projects because the only people that want to work with you are like mom and pop shop restaurants.
Yeah. Oh, that's really interesting. That is a problem. Yeah.
And then I kept going and then I started getting a little bit, I got my first big project was like with Spotify wanted to do a micro site for one of their affiliate sales team, right? And when I went there, I was like, oh, I can also do this. And I kept pointing out all the other things I could do. And they're like, oh, we don't need that. Like, we already have a team that does that. We already, like, everything was already in place. And all they wanted from me was this one specific WordPress microsite that was like 5 pages. And that was it, right? And then the similar thing happened with the American Red Cross. And so, like, one of the things I started realizing is that these big companies don't want a full service agency. They actually want somebody who has a very specific skill and a specific problem that they're trying to solve. So then after that, just like you said, what ended up happening is we did one website for a hospital, Columbia University Medical Center. And then all the other hospitals in New York started reaching out to us, and because I knew how to speak that language, in order to make it kind of became our niche in the healthcare. And then later on, when we started working with Gabby Bernstein, who's a personal brand, she started referring us to other personal brands. And so it kind of, I feel like it naturally happened. But just like you said, one of the things I learned is like when I go into a meeting with a client, I don't talk about any other projects that I did that's unrelated to that niche. Even if it's like something I really love or something like that, because at the end of the day, they don't care.
Yeah. We did this. So Google was a client, and they were our biggest client the last couple of years of our agency, doing 7 figures with Google every year for the last few years. And we would go and meet with marketing managers at Google, and we had a Google landing page that we would do. So my agency was Riser, and it was riseragency.com/Google. That was the only URL we gave them. We had a leave behind brochure booklet thing that was just Riser loves Google. And it was all the work that we had done for Google in this, little brochure thing we'd leave behind with them. All they ever saw was Google, 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 past work we'd done for Google. And our positioning in their mind was, this is another Google agency. Cool. And we're already on their roster. We're already in their agency database. It's already vetted to be able to pay us, all the complexities of that. So it became easy for them. But we never showed them all the other work we were doing, which was cool work. We were working for Hollywood brands and stuff and doing cool work, but we hid that from Google. I know that they knew, because if you go to our homepage, it was filled with that stuff. But the Google stuff is what we targeted to them. And it's the same thing like with you, the hospital brands, all you're going to show them is the hospital stuff.
Yeah.
In their mind, you have to create the illusion that you're so hyper focused on exactly what they need, and you speak their language and you understand their business. You're the obvious choice rather than the generalist who's like, yeah, I can design something for you. What do you need? That generalist thing.
One thing that you brought up that's so super interesting is the same thing happened in our agency is once you're in a big organization like Google, like for us, like it was like usually hospitals or American Red Cross or something like that. It makes it so like 10 times easier to get other projects within that same organization.
Yeah.
Like in other departments within our organization. And I think that's like, maybe, I don't know, that's something that maybe a lot like new agencies don't know. So like it's so important to get that first project.
That first one
that gets you in the door, because once you're on their vendor list, and everything becomes, because it's so hard to get on that vendor list, like especially for us, for a hospital, because we had to like go through like HIPAA certification. There were certain steps that we had to go through, which took us like 6 months to get on that list. But once we were in the list, every department was free to choose from their list who they want to hire. So it just made it so much easier.
It's so much easier. That's the way it was with Google. There was a process, and we had to sign a contract. We had to have certain levels of insurance, insurance and stuff on our business. We had to have certain firewall parameters on our file servers and stuff so that we couldn't get hacked as easily. We had to have all these little stipulations to be able to become a vendor. But our first Google project was relationship driven. So one of the people we had worked with at ABC Family for probably 6 years left ABC Family and moved to the Bay Area and started working at YouTube. And then he reached out and said, hey, I got a project that would be great for you. Can you guys do it? We're like, yes. And then he said, okay, let me put you in touch with the agency vetting team or their agency services group at Google. And we went through all the paperwork and did all the stuff. And then we did that YouTube project. Then the marketing became this. We would fly to the Bay Area or New York. Those were the two primary places we would go and visit Google, in the Chelsea Market building over there. They probably still own that building. Anyway.
19th Street,
Yeah. So we would fly there in New York, and we would just meet with every Google marketing manager we could. So one of my guys would reach out before. He would comb LinkedIn and just do a search for marketing managers. And then he would message them and say, hey, we're a Google vendor, or we're a Google agency. We just finished a project for Josh, and we are going to be in the Chelsea building on Thursday and Friday next week. Could we just get 15 minutes just to chat with you about some of the things you might need and some of the things we can do? And we got a lot of yeses. These Googlers love the 15-minute meeting. I think they bracket their meetings by like 5-minute increments over there. And so they would meet us in a little... they would meet us in a little cafe, and we'd spend 15 minutes with these people. And we turned Google into one like $7,000 YouTube project into a 7-figure client per year, just doing that. That was.
I would imagine you could probably do that with any tech companies or any.
I think you could do it with any type of business, like anything, any type of business, like the hospital thing. Like, what are the other departments at these hospitals that you weren't doing work for? And who are the doctors with their individual practices that needed the services that you were doing that they knew? Like, there's just there's an unlimited level of kind of spidering out the
And you'll be surprised how many projects these companies have, because like within Columbia University Medical Center, there's like the university side and there's the hospital side. But within there's also research departments, and every government-funded research needs a website.
Yeah.
So and they had like 20 new government-funded projects every year.
Yeah.
So and I'm sure like I've worked with some tech companies where they have so many projects, and
yeah,
like we wouldn't
So
know that from the outsider.
they're always coming. They're always coming. Yeah.
I also
So
love
much.
what you said about doing these kind of cold calls, but like warm calls in a sense,
Yeah.
because you already have like a relationship with another department
Yeah.
where you're kind of getting referred. And like, I haven't thought of that. Like I feel like if I did that, we could have probably got like 10 times more business, because
Yeah.
most of the business we got was like people in another department were like, hey, I love what you guys did for that one
Yeah.
launch. Who did you guys use? And then they'll refer.
Yeah.
Like that's how it happened.
Yeah.
But if I actually reached out to people and told them we did that, like,
Yeah.
I
It
can't
makes a
imagine
difference.
how many more I would.
I know. Well, we all look back in hindsight and we're like, dang, I sucked at the beginning of my agency, or when I was a freelancer, I sucked so bad at sales. We can all look back at that. If I started an agency now with my knowledge base now, I'd freaking slay compared to when
It'll be
it took
easy.
so long. It took so long to figure it out. It took so long, man.
One thing you talked about was relationships, right? Like I think that was kind of a common thread from beginning. And so I want to talk about, like, we talked about kind of like getting your first client and getting it off the ground, and then like let's say in the growth, maybe growing your freelance business and then maybe turning into an agency. One common thing I see, I don't know if you see this with your community, is a lot of designers are not good at relationships. They're very solo. Like they're the type of people that want to be in a bat cave, locked in, and just work on their projects.
Yeah.
Nobody bothered them, like that type of personality.
Yeah.
So how important is relationship in this business? And what would you say to people like that are like, I don't want to do cold calls. I don't want to message people.
I know it's scary. I don't by nature, I don't love to do it either. I mean, a lot of us as creatives are kind of introverted by nature. And those of us that seem like we're not, most of us are faking it. Like me. For me by nature, I'm like insecure like every other designer. And it's scary to go and put myself out there, but I fake it. And I'm so used to faking it for now a few decades that by nature, it seems like I'm extroverted, when in reality, inside me, I'm just battling that internal introvert. So I think the first thing I would say is it's super common to feel that way, but you really have two choices in that situation. Choice number one is to I guess there's three choices I'll give you. Choice number one is just go work for somebody. There's no harm in just going and working for somebody and let somebody else do the sales. Let somebody else do that stuff and just go be in your little bat cave and code your stuff and design your stuff. There's a world there for you. If you want that, you can still be a 6-figure level art director, designer, and senior designer at some agency, and you're making a good salary, and your day ends at 9:00 at night, and you have your normal flow. That can be your life, and that's just fine. You do not have to go into the freelancer, eat what you kill kind of world if that's not what you want to do. Don't feel pressure just because everybody else is freelancing to go do that. Go ahead.
So many times in my agency, I had this like dream, a temptation of like being that number 2 person, because I feel like you get all the benefits without all the hassles and the added responsibility. So like
you
that,
do.
It was like a dream for me sometimes. Like I'm like, I wish I could just go work for somebody.
I know, right? I felt it a lot of times too. But once you get the entrepreneur bug, man, going and working for somebody ever again is just soul crushing.
Yeah.
That not being able to take your bow and arrow and go out and hunt your own food and then drag it back to camp, that kind of internal ambition that we feel. I've never hunted in my life, even though my beard is coming in like a hunter beard. I've never hunted ever in my life, but this is what I see in the movies. Anyway, so yeah, once you catch that bug, it's hard to think that we would ever be happy working as the number 2 or the number 3 or 4 in an agency. So step number 1, I think just know that you can go work for somebody, and that can be a great career. And there are a lot of advantages to that are just fine. You do not have to go and be a freelancer, an agency owner, if that's not your dream. Okay. So number 2 option, I think, for these freelancer or for these designers or creatives who want to be in the back cave, is to just get 1 or 2 sugar daddy clients, the people that they're just feeding you work. They don't care if you're going and visiting them all the time. They just want just a production workhorse that's sitting there cranking out their stuff. And there's a business in that. There are a lot of people that do that kind of business. They just have a couple clients and they just crank on the stuff. And that's a good world. If you can find those clients, I think that's a way that you can still be siloed in. The third one is you gotta figure it out. You gotta break out of the introversion. You gotta become that person, and you gotta start reading books, and you gotta start practicing the techniques in those books. You gotta start practicing filming yourself on camera and sharing in your stories. You gotta break out of the fear of that if you want to be successful, because there's no creative entrepreneur or no creative agency that does not have some person who is good at relationship building sales in the top tiers of the business. There is not one. You cannot find one. You can't find one.
Do you think it's somebody you can hire? Like, can a creative person hire somebody to do that?
Man, I tried to hire people to do that while I was still doing that. And it's so hard because so many clients, even when you have a big agency, I'll give you an example. So after I sold my agency, I had 20 employees, and then I sold to an agency with 60. So we have 80 employees, and we had 4 partners. 2 of the partners owned 37.5% each. And then I owned 12.5%. And one of the other partners who they had purchased owned 12.5% of the company. So there were 4 partners, 2 majority, 2 minority partners. The 4 partners, what did we spend our time doing? It was like 75-80% of our time was in sales meetings. That's what it was. The people, they want to buy from the head. They want to know that you, son, are there and you own this place and you're putting your stamp of approval on the work. They want to feel important like that. And so when you think I'm going to hire somebody to be that sales machine for me, you can hire people to be lead gen machines. They can go out and build relationships. But when it comes to closing deals, man, if you're not in the room, your numbers are going to drop.
It's so funny for me to hear that, because I've had that same exact experience in our agency. And I thought I thought we were like the weird ones. And
no, it's everybody. It's everybody. I changed the name of my agency because I was trying to break out of that. So in the early days, my agency was Janda Design Company before I was I was too afraid to even freelance. And then I called it Janda Co., which was my domain name. And my clients had started calling me Janda Co. anyway. And then I got to where I had 7 employees and my right-hand person was making 6 figures. And every person who came in as a potential client was looking for Mike Janda Co. That's what they were looking for. They would assume my last name was that because the company name was Janda Co. Anyway, I was like, man, this sucks. I'm spending almost $1 million a year on payroll, and I still have to talk to all the clients. What is going on here? So I changed my agency name to Riser to get my personal name out of it. It didn't make much difference. The growth of the agency still had so much to do with me being in the meetings.
Yeah.
And it's not because I'm the greatest person of all time. It's just because the client wants to feel important enough to have the agency owner or an agency partner in the meeting. And if you don't make them feel important by being there, they're going to choose the agency that does make them feel important because the VP showed up or the president of the agency showed up. I think it's true even with these mega companies. Take a McCann, for example. They're landing the multi-million-dollar annual retainers with the Coca-Colas and Pepsis and stuff of the world. I don't believe that they're sending their director of client services without a VP or president of the specific McCann division being in those early meetings. There's a time when you let it go and you're not having to be there to babysit the account, but to close the account, and don't take yourself out of it too soon.
Yeah. And you probably have to check in once in a while too.
I love, and when you're not the one doing the work anymore, I would do these check-ins with my clients. I would do something like, okay, if I helped to close a deal, or I went and flew to LA and had meetings, and then we landed some project on the backside of that, I would email my clients like on a Friday afternoon every other week or so. And I would say, hey, I was just at Christian's desk. He's working on the comps and they're looking amazing. And I checked with Sally, our account manager, and she said they're on schedule to send them on Tuesday. Just want to give you a little update on Friday afternoon, but it's looking good. I'm super excited for our team to show you what they've been working on. That was my touch point with the client. I wasn't babysitting the project. I was just giving them the, hey, Mike's still involved message. I was truthful about it. I would check on the work. I would I didn't abandon them. And I would throw the little thing on bottom of it. Hey, if you need anything ever, just reach out to me. You have my cell phone number. Text me anytime or whatever. I would put that on my.
They love having that. Like, I have direct line to Michael. Like,
yeah, exactly. They don't use it. Like in most cases, they don't use it. They don't. They still tell their account manager because the account manager is doing a good job of managing the weeds of the project. Yeah.
I want to kind of parallel, because everything you just said so resonates with me, like in my bones.
Yeah.
I want to kind of parallel that with like my experience of that. Because, so you said something about having like, 3 minority partner and 2 majority partner. One thing I learned is that even when you have partners, I feel like there's still one person who kind of is in charge. And I don't know if this is like, I just feel like it organically happens because like I've tried so much to give more authority and responsibility and more ownership to people. But at the end of the day, it never quite worked out. And, you said something about you can either be the one, go work for somebody like that, or get a few sugar daddies, which I've actually seen. But I don't really think there's a difference between the two. Like, I think if you're running an agency with like 3 sugar daddy clients, you're pretty much working for it.
Yeah, you're pretty much employed. Exactly. You might as well be employed. Yeah.
Yeah. And at some point, you have to make the decision whether do I want to be this type of creative or do I want to be this other type where the owner, the relationship builder and things like that. And for me, I can even like clearly picture it. Like I've made a shift. I actively made a shift from one where I care about the project and the creative work, which I still do. But I had to like literally shift to like, okay, I actually care more about the relationship and solving problem for this client as a business, not necessarily like showing off my design skill per se or something like that, right? And one thing I noticed is that over time, if I wear this first person's hat, a creative person, and I've hired people to do the other side, but we kept getting to a clash. And the thing is, I didn't realize this until later on when I actually like switched over to the other side and looked back. I was getting in my own way. Like I was arguing with this person who was like the business relationship guy about certain things that I should have just compromised on. And if we did, the business would have done better. But because of my stubborn ego of being the creative now, is like, no, we will not do that. No, we will not. Like one of the things was like, he wanted to have like a second tier team that's doing like second tier mediocre work, but that pays the bills. And I was like,
Yeah.
no, we will not. Like, and looking back, I'm like, we should have done this a long time ago.
Yeah.
So I almost feel like when you're wearing this one person's hat and you haven't completely switched over to the relationship business side, you're gonna, even if you hire somebody who's good at that, you're not gonna let them do what they're supposed to do because of your, non-business ego.
Yeah.
I mean,
think
I don't know
it's
if
tough.
that resonates with you.
It all resonates with me. It's tough to let go. It's tough to trust that you should let somebody run with an idea. It's at the end of the day, if you own 100% of your agency, it's tough to let somebody make a decision that you at the time disagree with when the smaller team, like that kind of thing that you're talking about, doing the smaller work that pays the bills, that affects your brand position as an agency. It affects your ability to sell to the bigger brands. It's good from a business standpoint, but there's a risk on the other side. And you, unfortunately or fortunately, as the business owner, are the one who has to make those final decisions on those things. And we only really know in hindsight if that was the right decision or the wrong decision.
That's true.
And I do believe this too. The successful businesses, they make 51% correct decisions and 49% wrong decisions. That's the difference between the business that is super successful and the one that failed. It's so touch and go. I experimented with so many different things that you just don't know. And so that thing, in hindsight, you can look at it and say, maybe we should have done that. Dang. But you don't know what the path would have been if you did do that, and all of a sudden you lost one of your bigger clients because they changed in their mind what your brand position was, and you seemed like you were just gobbling up small stuff. You don't know. You don't know. So
Actually, we did have that problem.
Oh, you did? Okay, good.
We overcorrected for profit, and then we had to win it. So it's kind of like, I know what you mean about the 51%, 49%.
Yeah.
I also think that it's not like no decision is really final. Because of that, we went overcorrected and our work started suffering. So we had to bring it back, and we had to completely separate. Like now, when clients come in, we're very clear. Like, are we doing this project for profit?
Yeah.
Or are we doing this project for our portfolio? And the projects that we do for profit don't go on our portfolio. Actually, what pays the bills for an agency, our clients don't even know. Outsiders don't even know that we have those clients, because it's like some manufacturing company where we manage their client's website, where it looks like a website from the 90s where clients log in, and like it's just that type of, it's almost like the sugar daddy type of work.
Yeah.
But that pays the bills.
Yeah.
And what I found is like a lot of the sites that we put on our portfolio or we submit to awards, they're usually some of the least profitable projects, because
that's true. It's so true. Yeah. Yeah.
Because they don't let us,
that's probably true.
The clients that let us like freely take innovative, like take chances and take risks are the ones that are not willing to pay as much.
Yeah. Yeah. It's oftentimes the case. I mean, we won a bunch of awards doing the AIGA 100 show thing one time, and we were the agency to do all the branding and illustration stuff, to make all the cool posters and all this stuff. And we won a bunch of awards for that work, but it wasn't paid at all. It was just, creative free reign. And then we were able to get some awareness.
But you can use that to get other clients.
Other clients. So it pays for itself as a marketing tool for you. So you make an investment. You're going to pay something to land clients. You're either going to pay in travel, or you're going to pay in doing concept projects of your own volition. You want to land Disney as a client, then you better make up some projects that look like Disney branded things, and you make up concept projects, because you're never going to land them without those things that prove that you can do that type of work that they need. So you have to invest in the time or money to create these concept projects to be able to go and try that. You can invest in traveling to your clients. You can invest in advertising. You can invest in submitting projects for awards because it costs money to submit for awards and create the stuff. You're going to invest the profit that you could have had on a cool project. Instead, you're going to max out the budget and spend all of it and have zero profit or even a money loss on some project because you're going to use it as an award-winning submission. So you're making these investments into finding clients. You got to invest something. The clients aren't just going to come for free. You can invest in just joining BNI or Chamber of Commerce or something. You can invest in taking people to lunch. I invested in traveling to my clients. That's where the majority of my marketing dollars were spent, were face-to-face meetings, lunches, Starbucks, dinners, that kind of stuff. That was what I did. And yeah, I mean, the majority was of my marketing budget was that.
Do you think that face-to-face meeting makes that much of an impact?
I think it's even for sure, because then they're like, I love Mike. He's got my back. I'm going to use Mike's agency. Mike, I trust Mike, and Mike's in charge over there, and I'm going to send it over to them. But in today's world, I think it's even more important because if you aren't face-to-face with your client, then they might as well just be using the AI tools that you're going to compete with anyway. The only difference between you and the AI, it's going to be to where it's not even the quality of work is different. Now, we still can believe that a human designer is going to do better quality work than an AI designer. But look at the way things have changed just in the last 2 years of AI, and that's not necessarily the case moving forward. So how are you ever going to land work with a client? You have to differentiate. And the easiest way to differentiate from all the AI stuff is to be your human self in front of the client. Go and visit them. The AI cannot go and sit with them at lunch and talk about their family and get to know them on a personal level to build a trusting relationship so that they give you $100,000 project. You can, AI is going to be $50 projects, but not the $100,000, $200,000, $300,000, $300,000 projects. AI is not going to take that stuff.
Or even like $10,000 projects. Because I would imagine just emailing with somebody. Like I'm talking to all these different designers or whatever, and I'm just, all they are is just this email address to me. Yeah. And all of a sudden, if I'm sitting in front of somebody and having lunch with them and we're talking about sports or whatever it is, then now this guy is my friend. So am I going to hire 4 random strangers that I've only talked to on email, or my friends?
Yeah. Exactly. Who are you going to hire for your bigger investment? So a $10,000 project's that's a good threshold, because for a lot of businesses, a $10,000 engagement is where things start to be riskier. They start to say, we better choose the right agency or the right solution for this. The cheaper stuff, a lot of times they're able to take a risk. If it's a $500 project and it doesn't work out, then they're like, oh, well, bummer. And they just hire another person for $1,000 next time. That cheaper stuff, there's no risk. But the higher paying stuff, if you want to land that, the client's taking more risk, and you better have the relationship to differentiate you from the other people who do. And that's what I would look at too. I mean, we competitive bid against other creatives all the time. So clients get 3 bids. A lot of times they're going to get 3 bids for something. How are you going to differentiate if the other 2 bids have a human-to-human relationship with them and you don't? Your chance of winning that is so small. I mean, I don't know that I ever won without having some kind of phone calls, or in today's world, Zoom calls and things with clients to start building those relationships. Yeah. I think they choose who they trust the most. It's not the relationship, it's the trust that's inherent in the relationship is what makes them make you the choice.
Yeah. And I just feel like this is the same even in the personal brand space. Like if I look at my personal brand clients, we work with Gabby Bernstein, who's like a motivational speaker. and she introduced us to one of her friends. Like, these are actual offline friends, Jay Shetty, who introduced us to Mark Randolph, who's the founder of Netflix. And it's just like the series of personal brand clients that we got they're like all of our personal brand clients that are like all friends in real life.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm just like, yeah, like just if you're going to be in any kind of business, I just think that relationships that you like, if you want to be in that world, you have to learn how to
Yeah.
build relationship. You just, I
You
just
do.
don't think you can do it without it. Yeah.
I agree. The trust is transferable, and that's why it works. From Gabby Bernstein, and she's like, oh my gosh, I started working with Sun, and he's amazing. You got to meet him. He can handle your stuff. And she says that to Jay Shetty, and all of a sudden, Jay Shetty's your client because Gabby took her trust with you and transferred that right over to Jay Shetty, who transferred it over to the Netflix guy, who transfers it to the next person after. That trust transfers, and that's one of the things about building these initial core relationships is that you gain access to, I love the what's the Jim Rohn quote of we're the average of the five people you spend most time with. Yeah. I love that because I'm like, okay, so that means Gabby Bernstein has 4 other people who are similar to her because she spends time with them. So if you can solve her problem, then you get access to the other people who have that same problem because that's why they hang out. Look at you and me right now, son. Okay, we've known each other for a couple of years. We've never had a call before. I feel like we have because I've seen so much of your content. You've seen my content. We have all the mutual friends in the world that we've talked to. But here we are in a trust transferred relationship, and we're talking as if we're old friends because of those touch points over time. But we all know the same people. All the other design creative educators out there, we all know each other. We've all had talks with each other, and we're the average of all those people. That's who we talk with.
That's true, because like there's so many people that I've talked to that are friends with you. I feel like in like through that I already I'm already friends with you because I know those people.
We are.
And how they talk about you.
Yeah, we are, but and it's the same thing. Like Eva Lordia, she was on your podcast a few months ago or something. Anyway, she's my accountability partner. I meet with her every Wednesday, have for a couple of years now. And so I don't make a business decision without pretty much running it past her on our Wednesday call. And it's the same for her with me. We're just always just problem solving each other's businesses. I believe people should have that kind of person in their life. But anyway, she mentioned you, that she was getting off of our call to get on your call or something like that, or she had just gotten off of blah, blah, blah. It doesn't matter. But I was like, yeah, Sun, he's a great guy. And I thought at the time, oh, I should do some content with Sun sometime. And I hadn't reached out yet, but then I got a message from your person. And she was like, in her thing, she was like, Sun is blah, blah, blah. And she was like trying to introduce you to me. And I was like, man, why are you introducing him? I'm already friends with him because I've known him for 2 years. Just because I've seen your videos and all your stuff, I already felt like we were friends before that.
Yeah, actually, you're so right about that because when Jay Shetty was telling me about because he has a huge podcast.
Yeah.
And he says that like everybody that's been on his podcast, he knows them personally. Yeah. So he would just like DM them and be like, and I think we don't think of like, I guess even like my, Gigi, like we don't think how much of that applies in like at all levels, right?
Yeah.
So she's probably like introducing like, hey, like, because like to me, you're like, I guess you're somebody that I really look up. Like, I call you the godfather of carousels because like,
oh man, thank you.
I feel like you're the one who kind of started it all, and then like you went to Crystal, and the whole carousel community got created. But
it got crazy.
To me, you're the one who pioneered it. So you're somebody. Maybe so maybe she feels like I need to.
I gotta. Yeah, but yeah, it's interesting.
But it's
okay. You mentioned
so
Jay Shetty. Go ahead. Finish your
it's so
thought.
funny because like there's so many times like that where I request somebody and somebody that I really respect and look up to, somebody who I feel like is like way ahead of me.
Yeah.
And then when they say yes, they'll be on my podcast. I'm always like a little bit thrown off. I was like, really? Like, why?
I know. That's what I think too sometimes. Sometimes I feel the insecure Mike who doesn't want to reach out because I'm afraid that they're going to say no or something. And you just don't know. So I spoke at an event a couple weeks ago, and Amy Porterfield, who is in that kind of group of influencer people, she's got all those people are her friends and stuff. Anyway, she was one of the other keynote speakers. And after the event, I went up and introduced myself to her, and she was like, Mike. And then I was like, hey, and I told her she did some content with Eva a few years ago too, and I remember them doing that. Anyway, so I mentioned that to her, and she said, yeah, I know you from your content from social media. And I had no idea. I assume that I'm just a pea on nothing to an Amy Porterfield of the world, but you'll be surprised how many people have run across your content, even if you personally think that it's small, that you have a small
That's
engagement.
true.
I know pretty much all the people who have like that 10,000 followers and up in the creative community on Instagram, pretty much know who most of those people are. And I've pretty much interacted with most of them as well. It's rare that somebody has an audience of that size that I haven't had some
Yeah.
kind of DM interaction with them.
Yeah, I feel like you're really like immersed in that community, that the design community, and it's like, it's like it's amazing to see, because a lot of people don't see that. Like, I talk to some people, like a lot of people, and they think that it's just you just create content, you just like a content factory or something. You post content, that's it. But actually, the other half is like actually immersing yourself in the community and actually talking to people and actually building real relationship. That's the part that people don't see.
Yeah. I wish it was what it was, though, man. Like a couple years ago when you started to emerge on the platform, that was the heyday, dude. It was so
The
good
carousel,
because people,
golden days.
so good. It was the golden age of Instagram. And then they changed the freaking algorithm. I complain about it like once a week somewhere. They changed the freaking algorithm to people dancing and pointing and all the crap and reels and TikToks. And then it becomes this entertainment environment. It was such a great educational platform. And then Instagram did not nurture that. But in the design community, I feel it because that was my community. I loved the people and I loved being able to have those interactions and relationships. And it's so much less now than what it was. I was just looking at your Instagram before we jumped on, and you're suffering from the same curse of it's the 50,000 followers and up. Instagram pretty much decides that it's going to now show your content to like 0.5% of the people that follow you. As soon as you hit, there's some threshold, and then the algorithm screws you. And I've seen so many people.
Like you said, I wish there was a social media platform specifically for education, like, because that's kind of like what Carousel community was, right?
Yeah.
And so can we kind of talk about, like, I know most of your content is around design and design business, but moving over to like the education side, right? Because you, like, I really like look at you as kind of also pioneer of the education in this field. So are there certain things when you kind of switched over, now that looking back, that you didn't realize about, I guess, course creation, coaching, teaching? Like, what do you think are like some of the biggest hurdles that you went through in that switch?
Man, that's a good one. That's a good question. I haven't thought about it much because it was so organic of a process for me. I think one of the things that made it successful for me in the early days is I was not afraid to experiment. I would post like, if it was fun to me or funny to me or educational to me or something that I wish someone would have told me in the early days, I would create content around it. I had less fear back then. I would just be, I mean, if you go back to my old carousels, I have some where it's like, I grow a beard like once a year. And I have one where I shave down like all my beard into all these weird shapes. And those were the carousel slides. And my question was, hey, which one do you think is the funniest, or which one's the best or something? That was my carousel. I would never post a carousel like that today I don't know why. I think I'm just afraid to experiment or afraid to be like that. I do it in my stories sometimes, but man, I gotta, and this is a good question because you're
Oh, that's
prompting
so
me
funny.
to realize I've got to be more experimental than what I was before. I've got to go back to the root of that where I did play with content way more back then than I do now.
That's so funny because I feel that I felt that in my agency. Like, I feel like in the beginning, I was like almost fearless. I was like,
Yeah.
just trying. And maybe it's something that just comes with age. Like, one of the things I always say is like, one thing that you can't buy back is innocence, right? And
Yeah. Oh, that's really good.
I just feel like I had some sense of like innocence, like,
Yeah.
yeah, I was an idiot. I didn't know anything.
Yeah.
But one thing I did have
Yeah.
is that innocence to try something stupid or.
Yeah. Dang it. Okay, I'm feeling that right now because I did that lecture a couple weeks ago, and my lecture was taking people through the journey of my agency creation and some of the things I learned along the way and some of the systems I put in place. So I was going back through all my old drives and finding like old agency photos of our team photo and stuff. And there were times we were like putting on freaking costumes and like having a big snowball fight and just being the quirky agency thing that everybody was doing back in the kind of early thousands, that kind of just quirky and be funny and be creative. And I looked at that stuff and I showed a couple things, but I didn't show much of it because it was like, man, that's a little bit embarrassing. But I was fearless back then. I was fearless, man. Back then I was like doing that photo and then putting it on a freaking holiday card and sending it to my clients. I didn't care. I wasn't so sensitive to it. And I think that maybe it is just we get older and we get less courageous in our creativity than what we did before. So I'm feeling this right now, man. I got to go back to some of the root of that because it was fun. It made it fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess, I'm not old, but I
I'm
do
not
kind of feel that
old either. But yeah.
when I look back on some of my old stuff, I'm like, wow, that was cool. Like, I'll look back on some of the crazy stuff that I've done, even
Yeah.
design wise or like work wise. I'm like, man, like it had conviction. Like back then I was stupid, but I had conviction.
Yeah.
But one thing, the reason why I asked you is because now that I'm getting into this education thing and I'm creating courses and things like that.
Yeah.
One of the biggest, I guess for me, the stress I have is like, I would always like do a course or teach a class. And
Yeah.
then afterwards I look at the results, right? Of like people, like even something simple as how many people actually watch this lesson.
Sure.
And like fully watch this lesson or like people doing the assignments. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like most of them didn't even finish the course or most of them didn't even really get it. And
Yeah.
like that kind of, because I'm so like used to training my team one-on-one for long periods of time that, that really gets to me. Like, you ever experience that?
All the time, dude. Do you have kids, son? Do you have
No,
kids?
I don't.
Okay, so it's even worse with kids, this thing, because you're like, you teach them and teach them and teach them, but you can't make them do the thing. You can't make them implement the lesson. And some people just have to learn it on their own. And it's hard. I did a podcast. So my old podcast was Biz Buds I did with Tom Ross, and we did it for a year and a half or so. And it was super fun. One of the episodes that we did was about, can you unlock ambition in someone? And there's the phrasing, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. You cannot pull the horse's head down into the water and make them drink, but you can guide them to the water. Whether they drink or not is up to the horse. And I've had to adopt that mindset with courses and coaching and stuff. There are certain people that are going to consume the content, and when they're finished, they're going to go and find the next piece of content to consume because it's less scary to just keep consuming content, keep educating, it's scary to implement because what if it doesn't work? It worked for Sun. What if it doesn't work for me? I'm too afraid to implement. And so they hide behind continual education. And I think the only thing you can do is try and teach that principle and say, man, most of these people do not need more than your YouTube channel or your podcast. Like, take you, for example. Your podcast teaches so much business advice and has so many valuable conversations with smart people that if they only chose to consume your podcast and nothing else, and they were focused on implementation, their career would take off in ways that they can't imagine. But instead, they like to consume your podcast and my podcast and Chris Doe's podcast and 4,000 carousels and 10 YouTube channels. And it's just less scary to just keep consuming rather than implement. And I don't know. I mean, I think we just got to teach people that principle, and they got to make their own decision at some point to implement. I got forced into implementation by my clients, by the growth of my business, by fear. Fear forced me to grow a lot. I was so fear-based in the early days. It forced me to hire people because I was afraid, oh man, how am I going to get this done? It forced me to say yes to a client when I didn't know how to do the work. And then I had to educate myself on figuring out how to do it. But I was forced to say yes because I was afraid to lose the project, or I was afraid to not have the money, or I was afraid to not make payroll. Fear was the big driver for me in the early days of creating my business. And it drove me to implement. But man, if you don't scare yourself into implementation, I don't know. How do you get them to do it?
It's kind of like the whole burn the boats type of thing. Like it's like
okay, I love that.
I have to.
Yeah.
Like I have no choice. I just have to make it work.
Exactly. We're either going to die on the beach because, or we're going to win. Those are the only two chances because we burned the boat. Yeah,
that's
I like
true.
that.
So I guess, some people just, because I see some people who is in that place where they have to figure it out.
Yeah.
But they still don't do it. They kind of like, they have that fear of like implementing.
Yeah.
And I guess I need to adapt that mindset of like, all I can do is
give them the water.
I can't force them to drink the water.
You can't. You give them the entire ocean, but you can't force them to take a drink of it. Not that you should drink
They just have
ocean
to get
water,
thirsty
but
enough.
Yeah, they do. And what makes them thirsty enough? Death, fear of death makes them thirsty enough. So that's one way. And then the other way that people can get thirsty enough is ambition. And so you take an athlete, a high-level Olympic athlete who will monitor their liquid intake and all their vitamins and all that stuff every single day to optimize performance because their ambition is to win. They're driven by ambition. Other people will malnourish themselves and eat McDonald's every day and get overweight. And then at some point, they'll have a heart attack or a stroke, or they'll pass out, or they have to buy 3 seats on an airplane, or something will spark enough fear into them that if I don't change my life, I'm going to not make it. And they'll get scared enough to start consuming the right liquid quantity, the right vitamins to optimize their health. They'll get scared into it. So I think it's way better to choose to implement good practices based on ambition rather than wait until boat is burned and we have no other choice. We either die or not. And I was the fear-driven person in the early time of my age. And I still have to fight that too. I'm super ambitious, but fear still drives me.
That's probably why you also have like the accountability partner and things like that, is because
it's super helpful. Yeah.
I from the teaching perspective, I totally see your point. It's like I can't. They just have to get there on their own.
Yeah.
Because I've seen sometimes like where somebody will be in my community for like a year, and they haven't done anything for a year. But all of a sudden, like a year later, they're like all. I mean, they could have done it the whole time, but
happened.
Yeah, something happened where they can, and now they're like all in, and like it's I can't control that. I guess I just have to let that go.
You do. You have some things will happen in their life sometimes. Like, their spouse will lose a job and now they need the income that they didn't need before. So now it has to work. Or their spouse will get pregnant and now they've got another mouth to feed that's coming. And they're like, oh no, it's time for me to get serious about this. There's some kind of thing that can spark those kinds of changes. And my advice is don't wait. My advice to the people listening, don't wait until then. Instead, choose to implement because you're driven to maximize the success of your career. Choose to implement.
Do you think, from your experience, do you find that a lot of creatives and designers don't have that ambition compared to other?
Really good question. I don't think it's disproportional. I think there are a lot of super ambitious designers, creatives, because it's such an easy business to start. You're not starting a fencing company where you have to warehouse a bunch of product. And I admire the people like the Jeff Bezos of the world who start an online bookstore and warehousing books to be able to fast ship them to people. And they're spending thousands or millions of dollars to put in the business. The nice thing about the creative industry is that the only investment you really have to make is you need about $3,000 to $5,000 in computer equipment, a subscription to the software that you need. Yeah, exactly. You need a Mac. So that's saying that without saying it, but yeah. And you need a subscription, and then you need the time. You're investing your time, which sometimes comes at the sacrifice of a job and consistent paycheck. So you're sacrificing or you're investing your potential income working for someone else to try and start this ambitious freelance thing. So I would say it may even be disproportional in favor of there are a lot more ambitious creative people in the world because it's such a feasible business to start.
That's true.
You can start tomorrow, man. Quit your job. Don't do this, but you could quit your job tomorrow and start freelancing, man. And then write your little pitch and reach it out to everybody you know and try and start finding clients. You could start tomorrow. And there are very few businesses that you really could decide today that you're going to start it. And tomorrow it's started, and a client you could land by 3 days from now. Hardly any businesses have that luxury.
Yeah, I actually, you're right. Like, I think designers are super ambitious to kind of have that creative, like the freedom to work for themselves and get to a certain point. But I feel like it caps out at some point because most of the designers that I meet are not really driven by money or success. They're more driven by like creativity and creating things that they want to create.
Yeah.
That a lot of them I find like at a certain point they kind of cap out. Like they have no ambition to grow an agency bigger than a certain amount or something like that.
Yeah, I think that's probably true. It gets scary. The bigger you get, the scarier you get. It becomes a real business. So that's the challenge. And you've done that with your agency. There's a time when it's you and a couple of contractors and the overhead is low it's still just this little, I'm ambitious as a freelancer, but all of a sudden when I have to become an entrepreneur, like a real entrepreneur that's building a real business with a real structured systems and things in place so that I can scale from me and 2 contractors to 20 employees with millions in revenue, that's a real business. And that piece, I think there's the knowledge gap between being a freelancer where you can just leverage your skill set as a designer or a UX designer or coder or whatever. You can leverage your skill set and monetize that business to profit with a small little team. But if you want to get to where you got 10, 15, 20 employees on up, you really have to start building a real business that's analyzing data and having structured sales strategies and marketing plans and marketing budgets and things. Because if you don't do those things, that kind of business isn't going to make it.
Yeah, I can totally see that. Like there's a going from scratch to an actual like freelancer that are making a living.
Yeah.
being able to
Yeah.
pay themselves and profitable. And then from there to having like maybe 3 to 5 people in a team, but you're still at the end of the day, you're a freelancer
Yeah, you're an
with some more
overgrown
people.
freelancer. It's that phase. I call it the
And then there's
overgrown
like
freelancer phase. Yeah.
and then I feel
Yeah.
like there's that next phase where you're like, now you're actually running a machine. And it's like,
Yeah.
that's the serious stuff. Like you said, it's like
Yeah.
right before COVID, we were at a point where, our monthly expenses are like in the 6 figures every month.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, there are months where we have zero revenue. We have, because like our invoices are pretty large. So there's some months where we don't have any invoice and like just like $200,000 going out, right?
Yeah. I
And
know.
that's
I know
scary.
exactly what that's like. It's so scary. It's so scary. The first time that happened to me, I remember when my 2-week payroll was like, I was like, crap, that's like an S-Class Mercedes that goes out right there. And then I remember when my monthly payroll hit the amount that I bought my first house for. I was like, what in the world? Now my monthly income needs to be the amount that I was going to finance over 30 years, just 4 or 5 years ago. And when you start hitting those things, then it can become scary. But you can't run a business like that as an overgrown freelancer. You really do have to run it like a business or it's not going to make it.
I almost detached. There was a point where I detached myself from the business to a point where like, $1 million in my own personal finance would be a ton of money.
Yeah.
But and like when I look at it in terms of the business, now I'm like, oh, that's not that much. Like, do you know what I mean? It almost feels different. Like it's not even my money.
It's not money. So the way that I would tell myself that story, I would be like, it's not money until it goes into my bank account. When it's not in my bank account, it's just numbers. And my goal is to make the revenue numbers bigger than the expense numbers. But I couldn't look at them and say, my revenue number is 3 million and my expense number is 2.8 million. That would freak me out because it wasn't enough profit or it wasn't enough if it was numbers. Anyway, or if it was dollars. So
Maybe
I had to look at it and say it's numbers.
Like once you can start just looking at it as numbers.
Yeah.
Maybe that's like a sign of like you going from that freelance
Maybe
with
that
some
is.
few things.
Yeah, it is. Well, you mentioned, when you got $200,000 in a month for payroll or for your expenses in your business and you didn't bring any revenue and you had no invoices that month, where does the 200 grand come from? It comes from the business savings account. That's how you're covering overhead.
Also,
and if you look at it as dollars, then you're like, crap, I could have bought a Lamborghini for that. Why didn't I just go buy the Lamborghini? Because that'll freak you out. So I tried to not look at it as dollars until it actually got to my bank account. Go ahead.
I also started caring more about accounts receivable more than cash in hand.
Yeah.
Because like sometimes we would have like, zero revenue, zero cash coming in that month.
Yeah.
But we would have like $1.5 million of accounts receivable because, and like I guess just like, I think the way I looked at money completely changed. Like, I didn't even look at it, like you said, I didn't even look at it as money. I just looked at it as accounts payable, accounts receivable. It's like, just all numbers.
That's what it is. It's accrual accounting mindset versus cash accounting mindset. And cash accounting mindset is the way that most people think in the world. How much money do I have in my bank account? Accrual accounting mindset, which is how businesses should be run in their brain. It should be, what am I invoicing today? And how will that cover my expenses next month and the month after and the month after? That's how you can make business decisions rather than cash-based accounting mindset, which will freak you out. Cash-based accounting mindset, if you have $200,000 a month in overhead and you have $50,000 in your business bank account, that world freaks you out. But if you have 1.5 million in receivables and 200 grand a month in overhead, that's a story that you can still sleep at night. I'll be fine. I got the money. It's coming. It's coming. It's coming.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I have a question for you, son. How long have you been building your agency? What's your timeline right now? Where are
So
you
I started in
year?
2010. For the first 3 years, I just kept going in circles. I made so many mistakes
Yeah.
in the first 3 years. And then 3 years into it, it started growing. And for me, we were talking about this offline before, but for me, the decision to go from this to kind of trying to grow my own personal brand and content creation came in 2020, like right after the COVID lockdown. And it's kind of similar to what you said about like fear driven.
Yeah.
Because for years before that, I've been thinking like I should create content. I should build my personal brand. It's something that I've been thinking about. Oh, I should.
Yeah.
Almost kind of like the people that we were talking about that are like consuming content, but not actually.
Yeah.
Like that was me for years. Yeah. And then when COVID happened, I think what happened is for the first time, because before that, like literally 24 hours of my attention was on my agency, and like I couldn't detach myself from my agency. Like, as far as I'm concerned, as soon as I detach myself, it's over. Like, like we're gonna die, right? That's how I thought of it. But when the lockdown happened and we went home and everybody was working, we were forced to work from home, and I was forced to kind of detach and manage everything remotely. Very quickly, I found out that, wait a minute, actually, I don't have, there is a way I can detach and still manage things. And so that's when I started to slowly, step away and start making content and things like that.
Yeah.
So the COVID thing was, I always say, if the COVID lockdown didn't happen, I probably still would not have made content, would not have built courses or anything like that.
Night Owl Nation.
Yeah.
Well, your content's awesome. Your design aesthetics are awesome. I mean, you and your video content, you're so well spoken. I'm just going to give you a couple compliments here. You're so well spoken, and your quality of everything is so good, and your ideas are so smart. I just was watching a couple videos before we jumped on the videos on your site, and it's just you just got a gift, man, of how to articulate big ideas in an effective way. So you're cut out for what you're planning to do in this next wave of your career. You got the chops for it for sure.
Thank you. That really means a lot coming from you. I would love to maybe in the future, I know time is limited now, but I would love to talk to you more about the content creation, the personal branding, that whole world, which we didn't really get into today.
I would love anytime. Let's do another episode sometime.
Awesome. We'll make it happen.
Okay.
Is there anything else you want to add at the end? Where can people find Michael? What should they sign up for?
MichaelJanda.com. You can find all my stuff. I have some free courses you can check out. I have some paid courses. I'm working on my YouTube channel. I'm trying to build my audience there. So I'm cutting a lot of videos for YouTube, and Instagram is my primary platform. With those of us that have the Instagram audience, it's hard to break away from this. It's just that platform's like a freaking tractor beam, man. It just keeps sucking you back in. I love Instagram in terms of the community aspect, where the DMs, the Instagram stories, being able to communicate with people. I actually had one thing that reminded me, I really, really, really wanted to ask you. Yeah.
One of the things that I'm getting to a point where, a lot of the things that I'm teaching, now it's becoming repetitive, meaning something I taught before, I'm teaching again. Do you ever feel that I'm repeating myself again, and how do you keep yourself motivated and excited to keep saying it with the same amount of passion?
Didn't you say that? You said that in a reel that you had just a few days ago or something. I saw it I think it was on your Instagram. Anyway, I saw you say this exact thing. Yeah. So I just before we got on, I was thinking about that, and I thought, man, I do say the same things over and over again. I think the difference for me is so I have my community, More Creative Academy, and it's my little posse of people that I'm in the weeds of their business with them. And even though I'm oftentimes saying the same things, I'm saying them frequently in a new applicable way to one person at a time. And then you get the benefit of seeing the results that happen from it. So you're talking about pricing and you're helping somebody price something and you're working through the way that I go to pricing stuff. And it's the same things that I've said so many times, but we're doing it in a real world situation. And then to see them win the project at a bigger budget than what they would have bid it at and stuff, that just keeps fueling me. And so, yeah,
So it's the people. It's really the people that you're talking to is the difference.
Maybe there's a hack in that for you that I try and use sometimes. Like I have the certain contingent of people that they watch all my content. They'll comment on all my YouTube videos and stuff. They're my contingent of cheerleaders in my life that keep motivating me. And there are many times when I'm doing content and in my brain, I'm thinking, oh, I'm speaking to him or I'm speaking to her. And so it makes it, even though I'm saying the same thing that I've said many times to other people, I haven't said it specifically to that one person. And if you take the mindset of I'm trying to level people up one person at a time, I'm trying to build relationships one person at a time, then it becomes a little easier, even though you repeat yourself. Parents do this all the time, man. You're raising your kids, don't touch the stove, don't touch the stove, don't touch the stove. And how many times do you have to teach that same principle over and over again?
I think that might be kind of
at some point.
Like what you just said might be like the secret for me is like, I'm going to have to say the same thing to a specific, because like when I'm in Q&A, like when I go speak and I'm doing Q&A, and somebody asks me the question, which my answer is going to be the same. It doesn't feel repetitive at all. Like I'm very excited because I know this is what they need to hear, right? So maybe that's kind of like the secret sauce.
Maybe it is. You got to identify your persona, clearly articulate your persona in your brain of who you're trying to speak to, and then pretend it's an actual person. I did see a hack from one person. So when I was first starting YouTube content and stuff, this one person, I was watching some YouTube videos. Anyway, this one person said, tape a picture of a real person next to your camera lens so that it reminds you that you're actually speaking to a real person. And I think that's a good little hack. I never did it, but it's flipped a switch to me and made me start feeling more comfortable speaking to just the black lens myself.
I still can't get myself to, because most of my video content is actually like from something like where I'm actually talking to a person. So even now when I stare into the black, like into the green dot or something like that.
What do I say?
I guess so.
Dude, you got to do more. You got to do more of that kind of content because you do that so good. I watched the one for your Night Owl Nation, your little video. I think it was like, why should you join Night Owl Nation or something? And I watched that video this morning and it was so good. And you weren't talking to any other person. You were just... that one was hard. It was so good. It was hard. Okay, well, it didn't look hard.
It feels weird.
Like you played. Yeah. No, you did good, man. Give yourself more credit. You freaking rock that stuff. Just do more of it.
Thank you so much.
Yeah,
let's definitely, I want to respect your time, but let's definitely schedule another call where we talk more about like content and personal branding. Thank you so much for all the knowledge that you share. Like, I think when it comes to like design business, like I think you're pretty much like the godfather of like learning about the business of design, creative, as well as you like I said, I call you the OG of carousels.
Thank you. You're everybody. Nice. Yeah. No, I was just gonna say it's nice. Thank you. I appreciate that. It's been so fun chatting, man. We definitely need to do more content together. For sure.
We'll do.
Yeah.
I'll put all your links in the show notes. Thank you everyone for listening. Thank you so much for your time, Michael. And I'll see you all next week.
Bye.
Cheers.